Hello, I'm Micker410 and welcome to my channel where I focus on 3-inch revolvers and firearms chambered in the 410 bore shot shell. Let's check out today's video. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. In today's video we're going to be shooting 12 different 32 caliber ammunitions out of 4 32 caliber revolvers. We have 2 32 Smith & Wesson Long loadings that I felt needed some more attention. We have our Heritage, some Fiocchi Heritage, which are 97 grain full metal jackets at 949 feet per second listed velocity, and Choice Ammunition 115 grain round nose flat point lead high tech black with 818 feet per second listed velocity. Both of those are supposedly hot for 32 Smith & Wesson Long, which is usually 750 feet per second velocity caliber. So we'll get some feet per second velocity ratings out of those from our 4 revolvers today. Then we'll switch on over to a whole bunch of 32 H&R Magnum offerings that we have. Everything from smaller manufacturers like Ventura and Choice up to Federal and Hornady, which are pretty common and well known, to our fancier, more boutique ammunitions of Double Tap and Buffalo Bore. All right, so the Ventura is a 118 grain round nose flat point, no velocity listed. The Black Hills is an 85 grain jacketed hollow point. Then we have our Federal line. We've got 2 of them here from Federal. We have a 95 grain lead semi-wad cutter, and we have an 85 grain jacketed hollow point. Again, no velocities listed. Then from Choice, we have an 85 grain Hornady XTP with a listed velocity of 1100 feet per second. And from Hornady, we have an 80 grain FTX slug with a listed velocity of 1150 feet per second. So we'll see how close we get to those velocities out of our 2-inch and 3-inch revolvers today. Then from Double Tap, we have a 60 grain DT lead-free solid copper hollow point, and then a 120 grain Hardcast solid. Now the 60 grain doesn't have a listed velocity on it, but the Hardcast has 1050, and it says from a 6-inch barrel. That's pretty unusual to get barrel length listed. I appreciate that, Double Tap. So we'll see how close we get to that again out of our 2-inch and 3-inch barrels. And then we've got our Buffalo Bore. You guys know these as the hot stuff, the things that you take out either in the wilderness or when you really want the round to count. And so here we have, these are both plus P listed 32 H&R Magnum loadings. We have a 100 grain jacketed hollow point with a 1300 feet per second listed. And then we have a 130 grain Hardcast Keith with 1125 feet per second listed. No barrel lengths listed on those. And those are some of the heavier loadings out of the whole bunch. But anyway, we are going to shoot these 12 loads across the chronograph only today. We're only getting FPS testing, and we're going to shoot them out of 4 revolvers. We have 2 2-inch revolvers and 2 3-inch revolvers. One is kind of considered budget. One is kind of considered not premium, but like a more solid range, price range. And then for both the 2-inch and the 3-inch today. Okay, so we have, in our 2-inch, we have our Taurus 327. So this would be our budget in this category. And it is chambered in 327, so it can shoot 32 H&R Magnum. And I think because it's chambered in 327, it will get slightly lower velocity out of it than we will out of our Smith & Wesson 432 ultimate carry in 32 H&R Magnum. And this would be the premium offering, or the more solid, the more not premium. I don't know what to call it. mid-range. Yeah, mid-range. That's the term I'm looking for, folks. The more mid-range offering. Okay, so not as expensive as like a Colt or a Kimber would be, but not as cheap as a Taurus or a Charter Arms. All right, so these are our two 2-inch offerings, and I think we'll get better velocity out of the Smith & Wesson because it is actually chambered in 32 H&R. And the little bit of experience we have with this so far across the channel is that 32 H&R performs a little bit better out of 327s, but we're really, or out of 32 H&R Magnums, but we're really going to get that hashed out across this test here. Then for our budget offering, we have our Charter Arms Professional. I've made this one double action only in 32 H&R Magnum. And I've chosen this one because he tends to get a little bit more velocity than my stainless steel one, which is double action and single action still. And then for our mid-range offering, we have our Ruger SP101 in 327. This is the guy that started all of the FPS testing for me with 32 H&Rs out of 327 revolvers, because he was getting slightly lower results in a couple of testings compared to the Charter Arms 3-inch barrel that I've been comparing it to. So we're going to shoot all this. We're going to get the velocity all figured out, and then we'll be keeping track of which 3-inch revolver does best, and then whichever 3-inch revolver shoots each ammunition with the highest average velocity in a future video, that will be the revolver that shoots each of these ammunitions into clay and ballistics gel. And because we have so many of them, that'll probably be 2 separate videos in and of itself, because I have to, I'll have to like remelt the gel and remelt the clay. Okay, so again, man, I've got a little bit of shadow from the sun. Again, we have our Taurus in 327, our Smith & Wesson Ultimate Carry in 32 H&R Magnum, our Charter Arms Professional in 32 H&R Magnum, and our Ruger SP101 in 327 Federal Magnum. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're starting up here with our choice ammunition, 115 grain, high-tech black out of our Taurus. We're going to do 3 of each because we have so many. All right, let's see how well the Taurus in 327 does. Nice, I'll take that as a good first start. 759, 758, and 733. For an average of 750.2. Not too bad. Now we will shoot the Smith & Wesson 432 with the choice 115 grain. 766. 729.5 and 729.8. So slightly lower, but I don't have the accurate numbers. I'll have to add that in the video for you because I didn't exit out. All right. Matter of fact, for speed, I'm going to add the average numbers in editing, and we'll just keep going. That way I don't have to fiddle with the Garmin quite so much, everybody. So next, we're going to do the Charter Arms Professional in 32 H&R Magnum. Oh, 801.9, 847.5, and 826.7. All right, so this guy, I forgot, rotates slightly, rotates in the different direction from the Taurus and the Smith & Wesson. So I loaded them backwards. All right, and let's do the Ruger SP101. Let's see if we can get some higher numbers out of this guy than we did out of that Charter Arms. So the Charter Arms seem to do in the 800-ish range. Let's see how the Ruger does. 741, okay. 749. and 741. So it was a little bit lower than the Charter Arms Professional. It was getting numbers very similar to the 2-inch barrels. Not super surprising, but I think we'll find that the Professional had the highest. All right, folks, so the Fiocchi Heritage, 97 grain, full metal jacket, box velocity of 949 feet per second, out of the Taurus, 327. 740, 756, and 749. Not terrible, but very similar to what we got with the 115 grain rounds from Choice. All right, let's try the Smith & Wesson. Woo, 778, 776, and 770. So the Smith & Wesson has a tiny bit more velocity, but the reason why the kick is more noticeable in it is because it weighs a significant amount less than the Taurus. Probably about somewhere between 5 and 8 ounces less. All right, so now we're on to our Charter Arms Professional. 841. Oh, 826, pulled that one to the left. And 830. So again, we are seeing a performance increase of 70 to 100 feet per second out of that extra inch of barrel. And let's see if that continues to hold for the Ruger SP-101. 747, 749, and 731.9. Yeah, we are not getting the kind of performance that I would expect out of a 3-inch barrel in that particular setup with the 327 chambering for the calibers below it. All right, so that was our two hot or exciting 32 Smith & Wesson Longs. Let's actually get into the H&R Magnums here. And we'll start with Venture. All right, folks, so we're back to the Taurus 327 in 327, shooting the Heritage or the Venture Heritage. They're 118 grains, which is a little heavy for 32s. So we'll see what kind of velocity we get. I'll be surprised if it's very high, though. I take that back. 867. Woo! That's got a little bit of kick. It's nice. I like it. It's not unpleasant, but it feels like it's got some authority to it. Definitely more oomph than the 32 Smith & Wesson Longs, but not bad at all. Feels like a mild 380. All right, so we had an average of 870 there, which is pretty good out of a 2-inch barrel. Let you know that's really kicking for these little pocket calibers and 118 grains. Let's see what we get out of the Smith & Wesson. 857, 853, and 849. So it looks like a small amount of velocity over the Taurus. Only like 10 feet per second or so. Well, again, you guys will see all these numbers. I'll put them in proper. And the Charter Arms Professional, do we get another 80 to 100 feet per second increase out of this extra inch of barrel? 959, looks like we do. 945. And 932. Yeah, I'm not upset about that at all. That's some nice performance. 118 grains at just under 1,000 feet per second. Solid. Yeah, that'll do a good job for you. That'll get you nice penetration. All right, come on, Ruger SP-101. Give me some fun numbers here. 849. 871, and 858. Okay, so again, similar to the 2-inch numbers, just a little bit hotter it looks like. Okay, folks, so these Black Hills are our first hollow points of the video, and they're 85 grain hollow points. That's pretty much the standard hollow point that we're going to find across these with some variation. So I'll be curious to see what kind of velocity we get, because we know that hollow points expand based on their velocity. So they have to get a little bit of speed to really do their thing. Let's see if we get that speed from this Black Hills loading. And again, we won't know for certain until we do the ballistics gel and clay testing video later, but this will give us an idea. $985. That sounds like it might be some velocity that could get the job done. $895 and $933. Not bad. And again, still incredibly gentle. These had less kick than those Ventura 118 grains. All right, let's see what we get out of the Smith & Wesson Ultimate Carry. $991. That was nice. $964 and $934. Okay. I think that'll end up being a better average than what we see in the Taurus. Charter Arms Professional. Our first 3-inch barrel. 1056, and our first bullet to break 1,000. 1049. Oh, and a little hang up. And 1030.7. Well, the hang up wasn't good, but the performance was. And the Ruger SP101. Is it going to be in the 900s, or will it break 1,000? 972. 979. And 970. Well, that was very consistent in the 970s. Okay, so these Federals are some semi-wad cutters. They're 95 grains. We've shot them before. Had good results with them. Let's see if they continue to do that today. 933. 896. 881 out of the Taurus. Let's see if the Smith & Wesson will get a little bit more velocity. Ooh, I think it might. Oh, no. 924. 880. And 884. Okay. Looks like the Taurus 327 did get higher velocity. And that extra weight really ate up some of that recoil on the Taurus. The Smith & Wesson kicked a little bit more. But very mild kicking still. No stinging of the palms or any pain in the webbing of the hand. Very mild stuff. Anybody can handle these. 1047 out of the Professional, starting off strong. 996 and 1011. All right. And finally, the Ruger SP101. I have a feeling this is going to be the high 800s. 948. Okay. 857 and 907. I was wrong. This is why you have to run tests. Facts do not care about feelings. All right, again, let's start with the Taurus 327. 1027. Woo, that's some good speed. 985. And 947.8. I betcha that those won't have a problem expanding. I'll be really curious to see how they do. All right, let's see how our Smith & Wesson Ultimate Carry does. 992. 1038. And 1006. Also some hot numbers. Anytime I see numbers above 950 for a 32 hollow point, I have a good feeling that it will expand. You never know until you try, but I really just don't feel like numbers below 900 will get you expansion with a hollow point in this caliber. Our Charter Arms Professional, 1085, 1045, and 1094. Man, that's the closest we've gotten to 1100. So we did have a little bit of a pickup there. And our Ruger SP101. Let's see if this guy stays in the 1,000 or above 1,000 range. 1032, yeah. 1003 and 1073. Looks like the Ruger and the Federal get along nicely. So far, if I was going to carry anything in that Ruger, it would be this Federal hollow point. All right, everybody, once again, we are starting with the Taurus 85 grain choice ammunition hollow point 32 H&R Magnum. 993. Ooh, shot that one way to the left. 987. And 944. Not bad. I'll be curious to see how those perform as well in the ballistics gel. And clay. All right, Smith & Wesson Ultimate Carry. 942. 959. And 956.4. Not bad. Looks like it had just a little bit of speed over the Taurus, if I'm remembering correctly. Not much, though. Charter Arms Professional. I'll be really curious to see how these numbers all add up and come out when I edit the video. All right. I'm hoping that all these will be above 1,000. Let's see what we get. 1033. 1093. Oh, we got our first light strike. All right. That's a disappointment. Let's see if that'll go off in the Smith & Wesson. And it did. All right, that means it was probably the Charter Arms. That's disappointing. All right, and our Ruger SP101. 1039.8. 1042.2. And 1058.2. Those were good numbers. I bet you those numbers would get the performance you needed. Okay, so for a long time, before the 32 H&R Magnum started to get more attention here, along with its buddy cartridge, the 327 Federal Magnum, the Hornady Critical Defense was sort of the gold standard self-defense round out of it, at least according to tests that you see with like Lucky Gunner and whatnot. So let's see if these continue to generate some good velocity numbers. They're only 80 grains. Let's see what we get starting with the Taurus. 1012, 978, and 966. Not terrible. Very light in the recoil department there. The Taurus is a heavier Snubby. It's a little bit above 20 ounces, so it ate that the light recoil up really nicely. Yeah, you feel it a little bit more out of the Smith & Wesson. 951.7, 971.1, and 940.4. Yeah, those are very similar numbers between the two. Come on, Charter Arms. I'm sweet on you because you have 7 shots. All right, 1018, 1083, and 1102. All right, so that's sort of hilarious. Our light strike that we had again in this guy is the first one, I believe, to break 1100. I'm going to have to give him a real thorough cleaning after this video. Very mild recoil and decent numbers. And so, okay, so, yeah. Anyway, and now we're into the Ruger SP 101. 990, 971, and 987. Well, the numbers were a little bit lower, but there was no hiccup in performance in the actual firearm. Okay, folks. Well, unfortunately, the Charter Arms Professional has decided that it's going to have some issues that I can't fix at the bench right here. And I think it's really just the cylinder, the ejector rod starting to unscrew a little bit. The last time I had that problem happen, it was with the Smith & Wesson 629 Deluxe and 44 Mag. So we'll address that outside of video. And if it gets real bad, I'll reach out to Charter Arms and see if we can't take advantage of their fantastic customer service. And then if anything exciting goes on there, we'll include all that in the video. And if not, then I'll just let you guys know if I got it repaired and what kind of effort it took. Otherwise, let's continue on. Luckily, I have the stainless steel Charter Arms as a backup. All right, you know the old saying, 1 is none, 2 is 1. Well, that's why I have 2 of them. All right, so we're with the double tap, 120 grain. This will be the heaviest bullet we've shot so far. Let's see how he does out of the Taurus 327. Well, that was a little bit of fun kick. 891, 877. I am pulling this guy to the left quite a bit. And 855.2. Those are our lowest numbers in a little while, but that is most likely because of how heavy that bullet is. Let's see if we get similar out of the Smith & Wesson Ultimate Carry. Ooh, 883. 883. 871.4. Okay, it looks like we missed one of those 3. But we will call it there. Those are the first to be a little bit actually feel a little bit snappy. So that 120 grain, getting that up to the high 800s out of an ultralight revolver is the first time any of this got even remotely unpleasant. Otherwise, everything else has been very mild. All right, let's try out the stainless steel Charter Arms. 871. 957 and 957. Man, it looks like we weren't collecting a lot of data from those double taps. It thinks we only did 6 shots out of 9. All right, and let's do the Ruger SP 101. 957, Really? Let's end this session and try to hop back in. All right. 967 and 944.7. Okay. I don't know what it is about those double taps, but the Garmin for a minute there did not want to pick them up. They weren't terrible, but I don't know if they'd be my first choice in a hardcast. That amount of weight may be excessive. All right, once again, starting off with the Taurus. What are we going to get out of these? Whoa, 1261. Nice. 1203. And 1209. Yeah. These guys are definitely picking up some velocity because they're so light. All right, Smith & Wesson 432 Ultimate Carry. What are you going to give me with these? Double tap 60 grains. 1151. 1169. And 1055. Wow, that was wildly different. That was all over the place. I'm a little surprised. All right, double tap. How are you going to do out of the Charter Arms Professional? Or should we say, how's the Charter Arms Professional going to do with you? 1228. All right, that's the highest number today. Light strike. 1165. Man. Charter Arms is just putting in a poor performance today. I'm very disappointed. Let's see if that'll shoot out of the Ruger. And it did. 1412 out of the Ruger. Holy moly. 1392. 1306. And 1421. Wow. Looks like we're shooting all of those out of the Ruger for our testing purposes. The Ruger and the double tap might be the combo for 32 H&R Magnum. Or that might be such a high velocity that we get poor penetration. We might get over expansion. 130 grains, 32 H&R plus P from Buffalo Bore. Let's see what kind of velocity and kick we get from this guy. 1088. That was smoky. Yeah. 1117. And 1123. Woo, little tough on the ejection too. Let's see how they do out of the Smith & Wesson. Man, I shot that guy way to the left. 1077. 1095. And 1072. Ah, that's a lot of kick. It's like, oh, well, those numbers aren't that bad. They're very similar to what we saw on a lot of other calibers today. Yeah, but those calibers were 85 grains or 95 grains or 115 grains. This is 130. $11.87, $11.44, man. Holy moly. Yeah. Man. Getting a little dirty. And 1183.5. Charter Arms did not like the buffalo bores. I bet you the Ruger won't care though. But let's see if we're getting that same kind of velocity. 1145, and it looks like 1154 and 1134. Man, those buffalo bores, they're the only ones that have stuck in the cylinder, and they were very smoky. None of the others were smoky like that. All right, so again, this buffalo bore is listed as a plus P ammunition. We'll see how it does. 100 grain jacketed hollow point. Most of the hollow points have been 85 or 80 grains, so this will be interesting to see. I'll be curious to see if it's as smoky, if it has as much kick. If you are a person that's buying 32 H&R Magnum for maximum performance with minimal kick, perhaps buffalo bore isn't for you. 1173, not terrible, and the smoke isn't prevalent in these at all either. 1169 and 1138.5. Not bad, Taurus. Did a good job. You ate the recoil on that quite nicely. I have a feeling that the kick is going to be a lot more out of this Smith & Wesson. 1123. Actually, that's quite pleasant. 1139. And 1121. You had to have a firm grip on it, but it wasn't bad. I'll be curious to see how these perform in ballistics gel and clay as well, so that we can know if those velocities are too much for the jacketed hollow point, if it overexpands or underpenetrates. All right, Charter Arms, it's your last one. Hang in there, buddy. 1258, good job. 1259. And again. 1250. All right, so the Charter Arms does not like the buffalo bore. It has enough oomph that it pushes stuff around in there. It backs the cartridges out a little bit, I think. Okay, let's see if the Ruger handles them like a champ. That's the big belief, is that Ruger's built like a tank. Let's see if they continue, or if that holds up here as well. 1217, not bad for the velocity. Eats the recoil nicely. 1186, it is the heaviest revolver here at about 26, 27 ounces. And 1195. All right. Well, out of all of those, I'll have to check the video to be able to see which I think is best and which performs best with each revolver. But if I'm remembering correctly, I feel like Federal did a really good job just on their own. Performance and reliability-wise, velocity and reliability-wise across all the revolvers. Yeah, so that's where we're going to call it on this video. Look forward to a follow-up after this video with ballistics gel, clay, what happens to this Charter Arms that decided that it doesn't want to, the cylinder doesn't want to close properly on it, and we'll see what happens. Hey everybody, it's been a hot second since I made the first part of this video. A couple of things have changed since then. First, I managed to pick up this Taurus 327 with a 3-inch barrel. We're going to shoot all the same ammo out of this guy as we shot out of the first part of the video. That will give us a third data point for our 3-inch revolvers, and will hopefully clarify some speed discrepancies between the Charter Arms and the Ruger GP or SP101. Second, I wanted to let you guys know that the Charter Arms revolvers, their issues have been resolved. The black nitride, he was dirty. He got some grit in between the yoke and the frame. In this section, up in here, and he wasn't shutting properly, which means the cylinder wasn't locking, and that was causing issues. And I believe that as the grain was getting working its way down, or the grit was working its way down between the frame and the yoke, that's what was causing some of the light primer strikes, because I don't think they were dead-on strikes for those primers. I think they were a little off-center. Suffice it to say, that guy is working just fine now. The other Charter Arms Professional, the stainless steel one, what happened with that guy was he got knocked out of timing. And I believe he got knocked out of timing from shooting the 130 grain H&R from Buffalo Bore here, this 32 H&R Magnum Plus P. I didn't realize that this was Plus P when I was shooting it, and or I didn't realize really what Plus P meant. So this guy was 400 foot-pounds of energy, and that's more than like double the majority of the 32 H&R Magnum foot-pounds that we've been shooting out of all the other brands here. And so the Charter Arms was not set up for that. I sent it back to Charter Arms. Charter Arms fixed it in a jiff. I had it back within a month of starting communication with them, and it's been fantastic ever since as well. So they're not in this part of the video update, but they will show up in part 2 when we're shooting into the ballistics gel and the clay of the total batch of videos for this 32 H&R mega video. So if you guys will bear with me for a moment, I'm going to get set up, get my eyes, ears on, and the chronograph going, and we will shoot all 12 of these ammos out of the Taurus 327 and compare their velocities to the SP101 and the Charter Arms velocities that we got. So you'll see all those numbers up as I shoot this, okay? All right, guys, see you in a moment. First up is our Fiocchi Heritage 97 grain full metal jacket. 732, 769, 769. Didn't catch that second one, or that third one, I should say. We've got enough here. We'll shoot another. And 769. Pretty consistent. I'm not upset about that. Next we have our choice 115 grain round nose flat point lead high tech black. $766, $729, $742. Nothing crazy, but not nearly as high as the 818 listed. Okay, next we have our Ventura round nose flat point 118 grain. Let's see how it does. 871.6. That's a bit nicer. This is the first of our 32 H&Rs. The other two were 32 Smith & Wesson Long. 888. And 867.8. Next up, folks, we have our Black Hills 85 grain jacketed hollow points. We'll see how these do. $10.68, not bad. 952.4, and 937.1. That's a fair bit more than the Ventura. I'm not upset about that either. Okay, folks, we're moving on to our choice 85 grain Hornady XTP bullets. I think these are pretty much the same as what was used in the Black Hills, same hollow points, but these choice are claiming 1,100 feet per second. Let's see if it's even close to that. 1057, that's pretty close. 977 and 1050.2. Okay. I'll be curious to see when I crunch these numbers how those compare to the Black Hills numbers. Okay, next up is our Hornady Critical Defense 80 grain FTX slug. Yeah. Sorry there. For a second, I paused because it states that it's safe to use in 327 Federal Magnum guns. I wasn't really prepared to read that. It's not common that you see the caliber below listed as okay to be used with the caliber above. Anyway, let's see how well these guys do velocity-wise out of the Taurus. .958.9. Ah, there we go. Couldn't find the green dot for a second. 990.4. And 997.5. All right, so kind of mid. Again, well, I'm not really paying attention to how these numbers are coming up as I'm shooting them. I'll see it all when I edit in the video and, put it all together for you guys. All right, now we've got our 60 grain double taps. If I remember correctly, these guys were really flying out of the other revolvers. So let's see if they really fly out of this guy. .1303. Yeah, I think that counts as really fast. 1304. And 1325.4. Yeah, not bad. I'll be curious again to see how they compare to the Charter and to the Ruger. Okay, so now we're up to our 120 grain double tap Hardcast solid rounds. Let's see how they do. I remember these being particularly pleasant, so I'm looking forward to them staying particularly pleasant. 894.4. 905. And 918.4. Yeah, those were nice. Okay, folks, now we're up to the Buffalo Bore 130 grain Hardcast. These are the ones that gave my Charter Arms problems last time. I will never shoot Buffalo Bore plus P ammo for 32 H&R Mag out of a non-327 revolver again, just because of that. There is no specifications for plus P. All of that was on me, I'm lucky that the Charter Arms Professional only got knocked out of timing from firing these, and that nothing worse happened. So from now on, any other Buffalo Bores that I shoot, it will only be out of 327 Federal Magnum chambered revolvers or lever guns. It will no longer be out of 32 H&R only revolvers. All right, let's see how they do. 1137. That's pretty kicking. Didn't feel bad though. 1130. Also very nice. And 1135.1. So those were very consistent. Little bit stickier to eject than the rest. And I will say that these Hogue grips that came with the Taurus 327 here did a great job handling that extra bit of recoil that these guys put out. It wasn't much more, but it was more, and I'm glad I had the better grips. Okay, folks, now we're moving on to the Buffalo Bore 100 grain jacketed hollow point. These are also listed as plus P. So these will only ever be shot in my 327 revolvers and lever guns going forward. And let's see how well they do. $12.05, $12.13, and $11.80. Oh, also stickier to eject. All right, folks, now we've got our Federal 85 grain jacketed hollow points loaded up. I believe these are the same bullet as used by the Black Hills and by the double tap. No, not the double tap. Oh, the Choice, Black Hills and Choice. All right, anyway, we'll see how they do now. $994.8, $995.3, and $962.4. Very mild, very nice. All right, now we've got loaded up our Federal 95 grain lead semi-wad cutters. Let's see how they perform. Ooh, I pulled that guy way to the right. 960, 886, that's a big difference. And 882. All right, folks, that was a lot of fun. I'm looking, oh, man. All right, folks, shooting those guys out of the Taurus was a lot of fun. I'm glad I was able to add that data to this video, and I'm looking forward to seeing what those results are when I edit it all up. I hope you guys stuck around for a good chunk of this and that you will come back for part 2 when I shoot the revolvers that got the highest velocity with each ammo into ballistics gel. All right, see you in the next one, guys. Bye.